Hello, everyone, and welcome to the CWL Fancast. I am Sophie. I'm here with Marcus. Jay is not with us here this week due to some health issues. We wish him all the best in his recovery. And we also wish you all the best, as now there is no one here to guide the ship, and it is me and Marcus. So we've got a little bit of a special segment planned for after we talk about CWL this week. But Marcus, how have you been?
Oh, I've been real good. Been watching a lot of good wrestling lately.
Same, and I'm sure we'll talk about it later. But for now, let's talk about some good wrestling that happened this week in the land of the CWL. Vindication Nemesis, their first shows since Battle Lines took place, and there is a lot to talk about from both brands. Not just in terms of the stuff that happened, but also the Supremacy Cup just got started. So, it's definitely heating up in the world of the CWL right now.
It's getting real warm, and we're not even heading into global warming.
Yeah, that's long past.
It
Uh,
is.
I guess we'll start off with Vindication, as we always do. Um, First up, the first match of the Supremacy Cup, we had Yui Nishimura versus Danielle Wright. I believe it's the fourth time these two went head to head, and the fourth time Yui Nishimura picked up a win.
Yeah. That sounds about right. I think it's been
Yeah,
four. Was the last time they faced off
the cage fight where
was
she got knocked out.
yeah,
Yeah,
okay. That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
yeah. So,
Um.
and credit to Danielle Wright. We know she's a great competitor, but Yui Nishimura definitely came in here tonight looking to send a message after losing to Rocks.
That's what I was just thinking. After that loss to Rocks, that I didn't want to happen because I'm a big fan of Yui Nishimura. It seems like after that loss, she definitely came back trying to prove something.
I mean, you have to come back after a big loss like that. I mean, definitely the biggest match of her career and the biggest loss of her career. So, she's someone I could definitely see making a big deal out of the Supremacy Cup, and even if she doesn't win it, it's a good way to see what her standing is amongst the rest of the Vindication roster.
That's definitely a good way to put that. Um, yeah, I mean, even if she doesn't go on to win, I still think that every match she's going to have during the Supremacy Cup is going to be match of the night contenders. Because
Yeah,
every match she's in is great, and Daniel Wright as well. I don't want to not talk about Daniel Wright.
yeah. It's just unfortunately, that's just sort of how it goes sometimes. But speaking of match of the night contenders, coming up, we had the FFF versus Xander Woods and Garnet Court, a match where on paper you wouldn't expect this to steal the show, but I've got to be honest, this was, in terms of the crowd reaction I heard, like, people were off and popping for this one. And Colin Prince ended up getting his first pinfall victory in this match.
Now you say first. Well, you mean first of the season or first ever? Because I'm
Oh,
pretty
first
sure
of the
Prince.
season. First
Well,
of the season. That's
okay,
what.
yeah,
Yeah.
because I was like, hold on now.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
He has picked up wins before, but it's been over a year at this point, I think. Or at least, not over a year, but close to a year.
Which, with that being said, that could mean that Chris Princess is a better teacher than Michael Young.
I mean, that is true, but at the same time, both these matches that we've seen Colin Piper win as of late, Colin Prince, sorry, have been tag team affairs with Chris Princess. So it'll be very interesting to see how this training translates once Colin Prince goes out on his own, and we might be seeing how he fares on his own next week, as there's sort of a challenge that has been laid out for Edward Bronson to lock on the bloke breaker on Colin Prince and see if Colin Prince can escape it.
You know, I I don't want to speak ill of Colin Prince, but I don't see him breaking out of that bloke breaker. I mean, we've seen that take down so many people already. I mean, you know, it seems like every time that gets locked in, it's almost lights out right then.
The only time it's sort of been escaped, I guess, would be at Battle Lines when Alexander was able to sort of get out of it before it was fully locked in. But
Hmm.
still, it's definitely you could make the argument it's up there with TJ Black's sleeper hold for being the most devastating move in the CWL today, bar none. Uh,
Well, most devastating singles move. As we know, the most devastating tag move is definitely
the drop
the
toe hold elbow drop, obviously.
yeah, of
Yeah.
course.
Um, and now back to Supremacy Cup action. We had Kaylin versus Olivia Maestral. Two people on the Women's Battle Alliance team, two people that needed a win, sort of, to get back into, the swing of things. And Kaylin came out with the victory here in a good little match.
Yeah, I mean it was a great back and forth between the both of them. Kalen and Mistral both are, top of the line competitors here in the CWL and really in the world because we've seen them face off in other companies as well. Not against each other, but against other opponents. I'm
Yeah.
phrasing things very poorly.
No, it's fine. But, no, I definitely get what you mean. So, yeah, it was a big win for Kaylin. And she's someone who could be a sleeper pick to go all the way. I mean, we saw the Witch Doctor in season one sort of surprise everyone by making it to the finals. We saw Glook Attack, although now it wouldn't seem surprising, but at the time, like, seems surprising um, that they made it to, that they made it to the finals. Now we could see Kaylin in a very similar spot.
We could, and Kalen is definitely someone that I'm rooting for. I've been a fan of Kalen for a while now, so hopefully she makes it to the finals.
Yeah, I honestly, I think it would be really cool to see them make it to the finals just because we know we've seen them do good elsewhere. And I want to see how well they could do in CWL. We've yet to see that. And I'd like to see that. And speaking of people making surprises, our next match was not necessarily impromptu, but a surprise open weight championship match. And it was between Lady Britannia and Catherine Love. Lady Britannia getting this match by beating Yui Nishimura the week before Battle Lines, and then she only goes and does the damn thing and beats Catherine Love, and we have a new champ.
And then, while we have a new champ, we also had old Thug Jones coming out.
Yes, and I guess not only calling out Lady Britannia, but she got to feel also staking her claim to the openweight title.
And Taylor Jones is someone that it's been a minute since she's held gold, but some of my favorite matches in the CWL have involved Taylor Jones. I mean, she's a lights out competitor every I won't say every time she steps in the ring. She's been kind of up and down here as of late, but she's a lights out competitor nonetheless.
Yeah, and I think like if you just look at the resume of Taylor Jones, I mean, uh, like when Thug Jones was created, the very first battle lines against Annie Thunder. If you look at Endgame, I believe it was Endgame 2 where she defended the Vindication Women's title. Like she has been she's one of those people where it's like everyone talks about the big four, Annie Thunder, Scout McKenzie, Cal Valen, and Davina Rose. But like Taylor Jones is definitely, you can make the argument, just as, if not more important to the history of CWL and its women's scene, with the accolades she's had.
Yep, absolutely. And I feel like we brushed over Lady Britannia's win. It's someone else that I've been kind of
Yeah,
excited to see more out of.
yeah, Lady Britannia. This, I've got to feel, came very out of nowhere for a lot of people. Just, and that's no discredit to Lady Britannia, but it's like Catherine Love had been so dominant this season,
Hmm.
and then Lady Britannia is sort of just on this blitz of a run. So, I don't know. It was an interesting match. She definitely took her shots and then came back with that Geordie driver, which in the past two matches has been one hit, one pin. Like it's been over. So it might be a while until we see her lose that belt.
That's true. And I'd be interested in seeing a long reign from Lady Britannia. I feel like the open weight title will go the openweight championship rather. We'll go back and forth where you'll have these long reigns and then these short reigns, and it would be interesting to see another really nice long reign.
Yeah. I think, though, one thing I'd like to see is I'd love to see if Lady Britannia, how often she defends it, because Catherine Love did sort of go quite a bit of time without defending her title. I
Hmm.
mean, obviously she didn't defend it at Battle Lines, or I don't believe even at the pay-per-view beforehand. So, very interested to see uh, if Lady Britannia is more of a fighting champion. And I think given the fact that she just sort of got called out and punked out just a little bit by Taylor Jones, we very well might see that. And speaking of fighting champions, we move on to Pistolero versus Austin Wolf. Austin Wolf may be making it a bit closer than some people even thought, uh, but Pistolero came out with a secured win.
Yeah, with I honestly seeing this matchup, that's what I expected to happen. You know, Pistolero seems to be kind of at the top of his game right now. Um, but also, it's interesting to see Austin Wolf getting out there back into some singles action here and there because we've seen him kind of with the Sons of Fenrir and really just kind of doing that. I'd be interested to see if he takes on more singles matches in the future.
Yeah, I think. I mean, we know apparently he's been announced for being on the qualifiers for the Mexican side of the Pro Wrestling World Cup that's happening. So we'll get to see how he does in singles action there. But I agree, it would be interesting to see how Austin Wolf does in singles action because he definitely held his own here. It's just not enough to beat Pistolero. But there's not many people that can beat Pistolero. Is the thing. So definitely at least a good showcase there for Austin Wolf and a showcase for the champion. But we now move on to our main event of the evening, the final match of the Supremacy Cup on the Vindication side for tonight's episode, Marilyn Benson versus Valencia, a rematch of the openweight title match earlier in the season. And this one was fast paced, hard hitting, and Marilyn Benson came out with the win.
Yeah, we finally got to see Benson kind of return to form here. We got to see that Benson Blitz again, which I
Yeah.
was really excited about because I've been a big fan of Benson for a while. Um, you know, Valencia is one of those people that a win over her is always a big deal, but I feel like this was definitely kind of like the win that Benson needed. She's kind of been kind of a slump lately, and it's good to see that she's kind of breaking back out of that.
But speaking of slumps in that same vein, like Valencia as well, very much so. Just it feels like she's sort of spinning her wheels at the moment. She hasn't really been able to get much going, and maybe she's not, going full force because she knows that her stablemate currently holds the woman's title, so she doesn't want to take that from her. But I don't know. It's weird seeing her struggle as much, and I'm interested to see how she does in the cup.
I am as well. I absolutely am, and with all of the matchups that we have just here on the Vindication side, we'll get to the Nemesis side in a second, but just the matchups we have here on the Vindication side, I'm really excited for. Um, I mean, it'd be nice to get to watch it. Kaylin and Valencia. Marilyn Benson and Kaylin, Olivia Maestral and Benson. I mean, these are all matchups that I'm looking forward to seeing here in the Supremacy Cup.
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, and it's one of those things where it's it's difficult to sort of. It's always difficult to judge the Supremacy Cup because a big important thing is that you don't know when people are going to be facing each other in terms of the bracket. I mean, this match could have got completely different if this was the two of them's last matches. So
Oh, absolutely.
it's a very interesting sort of dichotomy about it. We're back here and we're back onto Nemesis. With we started Nemesis with the debut of Backroom Dealings, and we sort of there was speculation about this after Cairo debuted at Battle Lines. but now we can confirm all of the backroom dealings are on Nemesis. And it seems like FJA was sort of the first person to sort of draw the ire of this new group. And we'll talk a bit more about them later as they have match later on the show. But I guess just sort of like first impressions of backroom dealings.
I'm really excited. Yeah, I was excited when Genesis was announced, and as we've kind of gotten call-ups from Genesis, I've been curious to see if anyone was gonna kind of form a stable or anything. It's really neat to see that happening.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think it's like you can, and this is at no discredit to anyone else that's come up from Genesis, but at the same time, it's like I think the fact that they did form that group and make that name for themselves that way, and like and break out that way as a group, which we hadn't seen anyone do really before on Genesis, it sort of helped them stand out because I've got to be honest, this might be one of the most anticipated debuts because for a lot of people, it was a matter of like if. For backroom dealings, it always felt like a matter of when.
mm-hmm.
So, very interested to see how they fare though on the main roster. Also, speaking of Genesis, just a brief detour. Uh, Thought I would mention that apparently a CWL legend has started taking on a managerial role in Genesis. Jesse Hazard is apparently taking Jesse Anderson under their wing. So, for Genesis fans that want us to talk about Genesis on the show, there you go.
We're That's the one. You get your
Yeah.
one per episode, Genesis.
Yeah, we're never talking about it for the rest of the episode. In fact, we're not even going to say the word. Coming up next, we've got Zach Anderson, though, versus Damian Morgan. Zach Anderson, honestly, is making a case for being the best wrestler. Maybe not win-loss wise, but in terms of match quality in the company right now. Because he has been putting on bangers after bangers.
Yeah, I mean, it won't be long before he will have 15 or 20 5-star matches under his belt. I mean, he's already on his way. And let's give some credit to the people that to his dance partners.
Oh,
Damian
absolutely.
Morgan is a phenomenal wrestler.
Absolutely. But it's just like we've seen it with Johnny Gemini, we've seen it with John Spartacus, and while it hasn't always gone his way in the win-loss column, like I have never saw a Johnny Gemini match and not expected a match of the night contender, or even a match of the month contender. I think we got that here with Damian Morgan. But Zach Anderson did pick up the win, and yeah, this was just a really good match. Damian Morgan, you've got to feel it was a bit of a heartbreaker for him because he wants to take down the Fatal Vices, but he just sort of fell at the first hurdle. So you've got to sort of wonder what's next for him on that quest.
Yeah, that's very true. It would be interesting if he decided to kind of push on and continue trying to take down the Vices, but I feel like it's something that he's going to need to have help with. Not because I think he specifically needs help, but because the Vices are such a large, encompassing group. I just don't see one person taking them down.
Absolutely, and we're sort of seeing that with the Kingsmen, who formed specifically to take down the Fatal Vices, almost reminiscent of the Alliance from back in the day. Shouts out to the Alliance. But we could possibly see Damian Morgan creating a temporary deal with that group to help him out, and he helps them out. But that's one of those things where we'll have to see how that develops in the coming weeks. Next up, Nemesis had their first Supremacy Cup match as Cassie Clark took on Sheila. And speaking of the Kingsmen, Cassie Clark, member of the Kingsmen, and picked up the win for her group in this match.
Oh, my apologies. I went to talk and started to cough.
No problem.
Yeah, no, Cassidy Clark. We were just talking about Zach Anderson, and every match he has whether he's winning or losing, it's always a great match. Cassidy Clark is also one of those people, and even her opponent in this match, Sheila, is one of those people. I mean,
Absolutely.
both of them have great matches, time and time again. Um, it just it seems like in this first Supremacy Cup match on Nemesis that Cassidy Clark may have just came out a little bit further ahead than Sheila. As we saw, Sheila did attempt to kick out there, but it was after the 3
Yeah,
count.
it was like 3.1, the closest you could get to kicking out without it continuing the match. Uh,
Yeah.
so you've got to feel that's also a bit infuriating for Sheila, knowing that if you had a millisecond more energy, you would have walked away with a point. But I mean, hey, that's just how it goes sometimes, and we'll have to see how they do respectively. I think Cassidy Clark's one of the people that has the tool set to do very well in this tournament. Um, and I think we'll talk about them later on, but I think she has the ability to take down a very tough opponent that many people might not be ready for. But we'll talk about that once we get to the main event. Anything else about this match, or are we good to move on down the card?
No, but I think we're good to move on to the
Yeah,
next match here.
because next match was uh, Cairo making his singles debut on the main roster against Warboy Crom. The first backroom dealings match of the night, and it was a very impressive showcase for excuse me, for Cairo.
Oh, yes, it was. Not only was it a good showcase, but it was against Warboy Crom, whom I would consider to be part of the one of the best tag teams to ever be in CWL.
And
Um,
also, like the Warboy Crom, like he's been like School Attack, and I don't think there's anyone in the CWL at any level of the card who would say, you know, that Warboy Crom is an easy match. Like even with his win
oh
loss
no,
record not being the most positive, like he has definitely got to be one of the toughest competitors out there. And for Cairo to win so convincingly shows a lot of promise for him going forward.
yes, it definitely does, and it shows a lot of promise for what backroom dealings is trying to do here. The first official match of backroom dealings was Cairo dismantling Crom.
Absolutely. And I'm very interested to see how they progress because honestly, and I don't like saying this lightly about new people, but if you told me tomorrow that hey, Cairo or someone from Backroom Dealings is going to be challenging for the world title of Titan Clash, I honestly wouldn't look twice at it just because like they're one of the few people who sort of had that credibility when they came up from Genesis because they did so well as a team down there and made such a name for themselves that it's like, yeah, they're on everyone's minds right now. Of course, they would be in the title scene almost immediately.
Yep, I couldn't attempt to disagree with that.
Yeah.
That's a very good assessment.
Yeah, and speaking of backroom dealings, coming up next, we had Eli Evans versus Dave Graves in a handicap match against FJA. Uh, FJA demanded this match and sort of thought a bit too much with his guts, not enough with his head here, as he put up a good fight, but it's 2-on-1. Like, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely seen people in the CWL succeed in matches where they were at a handicap,
Yeah,
but Eli Evans and Dave Graves are both, I mean, they're at the top of their game right now, and FJA himself was even at the top of his game, but just 2-on-1 is just didn't go in FJA's favor. I don't think it's going to.
absolutely, and there are also some people. I mean, the tag division. I honestly, I'm gonna come out and say I think the tag division is more stacked than it's ever been right now in the CWL because there's so many people who could realistically challenge for those tag team titles. Like, you've got Starjammer LLC who seem to be on a collision course with the tag champs. You've got FFF who want the tag titles. You got Broken Standard who many people think that if their match at if that match of Verdict had been a just straight up tag 2-on-2, they would be the tag champs. Like, there's so much good talent in the division, and that's not even scraping the surface of the larger stables that we have. That Eli Effett and Dave Graves, uh, I'm interested to see what they do compared to some of the bigger name tag teams when it's not a handicap match.
Yeah, that was kind of a thought that I had watching this was, it was good to see them in action against a single opponent, but I'm very curious to see how they play out against a seasoned team, against people who train together, they watch film together, they've wrestled together. I'm curious to see what happens when they go up against one of the more seasoned tag teams here on Nemesis, or even a team from Vindication.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's only a matter of time before we see them lock up against another tag team, and we'll see how it goes. I think if they can prove that they can beat one of the top tag teams, like a winner for someone like an American Dreamboats or a War Boys or something like that, it would definitely show that they are not to be trifled with. Because this was a good victory, but it was an expected one. So let's see what they do later on. Coming up next, we had more Supremacy Cup action as Valkyrie took down Quinn Edwards in convincing fashion. Valkyrie yet to lose on the main roster, and I've got to be honest, I think she might be the favorite to win the whole thing.
You know, that was kind of my thought going into this. Now this next match that we have after this kind of muddles the water there for me. But yeah, Valkyrie was definitely my pick for who I thought would win the full Supremacy Cup, and she's made a very good showing so far. Like you said, undefeated. She beat Quinn Edwards. And Quinn, she's kind of been back and forth in her time here in CWL, but we've seen what she can do in Japan.
Yeah.
We've seen that she's a phenomenal athlete. She's one of the pillars, in my opinion, of the Wildfire women's division.
Yeah.
So to see such a solid victory from Valkyrie, I think speaks volumes about her as a wrestler.
I think Quinn Edwards is very much so in the same vein as the likes of Valencia and sort of Taylor Jones, in which, like, you always have to see them as a threat, but at the same time, they're very inconsistent in when they're actually threatening in terms of a competitor.
Yeah.
And
That's a really good way to look at that.
And I think that's sort of the difficulty with this tournament is you can't just show up once. You have to be showing up every week, and it's going to be interesting to see how she progresses with that. Valkyrie picking up a win. And then the main event, Liza Horror was set to face a mystery opponent. Apparently there was getting some contractual things lined up, and that turned out to be the winner of the second ever Supremacy Cup, Harley Quinn, who was able to put away Liza Horror. Harley Quinn doesn't look like she's missed a step here. Just did great in this match. And she's someone who it's going to be very interesting to see how she does against the new crop of talent. Because we've seen her versus Cassie Clark and she lost. And now you've got Sheila. You've got Valkyrie. Like, also added to the mix, who we've not seen go up against her. I don't know if she's ever faced Quinn Edwards. She might have. But my point is that, like, it's not going to be same old for Harley Quinn. So we'll have to see how she does against the new crop of talent.
Yeah, well, and the thing is, something that's been running through my mind is she has been gone for a moment, and there's a lot of new talent that she hasn't had the chance to face before, but she has had time to train outside of the CWL. She has had time to watch film, so I'd like to think that she would go into these matches at least fairly knowledgeable about her opponents. But there's a lot to be said for actually facing someone. When you face someone 2, 3, 5 times, you get to the point where you can kind of feel what they're gonna do next, and I feel like Harley Quinn doesn't have that in the Supremacy Cup this year.
Yeah, because I think one thing, if you noticed from her very long women's title reign, a lot of her defenses were like series matches. Like She
Yes.
was she faced Kaylin after she'd already lost to her. She was facing Scout McKenzie for like the third time, Marilyn Benson for the third time. It's one of those things where it's like, yes, she had a dominant reign, but also it's like she was not necessarily facing a lot of new challengers. It'll be interesting to see how she does when it's only new talent that she's sort of going to be going up against. But all in all, I think this was a great week of CWL. I mean, we had a lot to talk about, and we didn't even cover all of it. I mean, there was Johnny Gemini staking his claim to the Twitch title, Alexander sort of just stating that Drake isn't a dinosaur, and Jay Scott staking his claim to those tag titles. There's a lot of stuff up on the horizon, and I think Titan Clash, the next pay-per-view, is definitely taking shape.
Also, I just want to say on the topic of Alexander, the man's wrong. Drake's a dinosaur. I will not believe anything else other than he is a dinosaur. You seen the Matthew Broderick Godzilla? You know, it ends on the cliffhanger with the egg. That's Drake.
Yeah, Drake is the
Drake
egg.
was that egg.
Do you think Drake could get me set up, like, just to meet Matthew Broderick?
I don't know, but I really want to. He seems like a cool guy.
He does seem cool. Like, he did, like, Ferris Bueller, and then he did The Producers, which was awesome. And then he did Godzilla. Not necessarily in that order, but he did those movies. And then it's like, he's sort of... you don't hear a lot of drama about Matthew Broderick. Matthew Broderick's a cool dude. Maybe we'll save the talking about Matthew Broderick for the segment later, but we'll just briefly go over next week's show. Supremacy Cup obviously continuing. Vindication having Valencia versus Kaylin take place. Liza Horror versus Valkyrie on the Nemesis side for that. Ricky Valentine is going to be in action. His opponent has not been announced just yet. We saw Gvateri, we've got to mention, we saw Gvateri call out Ricky Valentine on Vindication, so it'll be interesting to see how that sort of develops. MD will be going against Jasper Star. Jasper Star, who's been struggling to find his footing. A win over the YouTube champion could do a lot for him. On the Nemesis side of things, we've got Jay Scott going up against Jacob Nitro. And we obviously know that will probably be happening as the tag title match at Titan Clash. And then the main event, or the supposed main event, and I'm very much so looking forward to this, Pinball Witch versus Olivia Bodum, number one contenders for the Nemesis Women's title. Which I'm excited for that, but I'll let you continue, because it seems like you have something you have to say.
Well, I was gonna say I'm very excited for that match, but I'm also kind of excited for the aftermath of that, because whoever wins that's gonna get that number one contender shot again, at Jada King, and both of those women, both Pinball Witch and Olivia Bodum, have already lost to Jada King, so it would be interesting to see, how things play out. Maybe Pinball Witch wins and goes on to face Jada King. Maybe Pinball Witch is more prepared than she was the last time. Maybe the same could be said about Olivia Bodum. And that's what I'm excited for. Yeah, I'm excited for what happens next.
And again, we also talked about how Harley Quinn, she would lose the first match, but then would win later on in the sort of the series. We could very well see that here. So I'm interested to see how it goes, and I'm sure it'll be a banger next week. And we're going to take another just quick break. It'll be a couple seconds for you all, but we're just going to grab some water, and then we'll have our mystery segment for the week. Stay tuned. All right, everybody. It's the moment we've been waiting for. So when we found out that unfortunately Jacob would not be joining us this week, it obviously sucked. But then me and Micah started to realize that now there's no one to hold the reins of the ship and stop us from just
There's no adults here now. We get to be wild.
Yeah, we get to do whatever we want. Yeah. So we realized that we all love CWL. But some of y'all need to realize that there's wrestling outside of the big name companies. And y'all need to be educated. So we have decided to give you all a bit of a wrestling homework lesson. So what we would like to do is everyone pause this video right now, or pause the podcast. How if you are viewing this or listening to this content, pause it, and we want you to go and watch Kenta Kobashi versus Samoa Joe from Ring of Honor. Because we are going to be...
October
Yeah,
1st, I think. October 1st, 2005. I think was the
I'm confirming now. But go watch it, because we're going to be talking about it today. And truth be told, I had not seen this match until the other day when we found out that it would just be us doing the podcast. And yeah, it was October 10th, 2005.
Okay.
And I was watching it because I've always wanted to. It's just, not had the time or the reasoning. And we're going to go over it, and we'll just sort of riff on wrestling for a bit, because we love wrestling. Y'all love wrestling. But we think you guys could love more wrestling. So we're going to talk about more wrestling. So, I'm just going to say right off the match, this match ruled indubiously.
Oh yeah, the match rules ass. It's so good.
We're going to start talking about it, because we assumed you all paused and then went to go watch it. So
I just, before we get into it, I want to give some background info for anyone who may not know.
Yeah.
So this match took place on one of the only times Kenta Kobashi has ever wrestled in the United States. When he got out of the All Japan dojo, it was around the time that All Japan had stopped doing excursions with their young boys. So he didn't go on an excursion, outside of Japan. He just came straight into All Japan. So this was something people had been wanting to see for like almost 20 years, or over 20 years at this point. We said it was 2005. I think he debuted in 1988. So over 20 years.
Yeah.
And Kenta Kobashi didn't think anyone would know who he was. He didn't think anyone would be excited to see him. Like, Joe had to explain to him that, like, people want to see you here.
Yeah, people want to see you, and they did. I think,
oh, yeah.
right off the bat. So one thing I think needs to make a comeback in wrestling is streamers.
Oh, yeah.
What you can already tell from the first thing, they do the announcements like Samoa Joe, and then, like, he gets a couple streamers and like, it's cool, it's whatever. But then he goes, Kobashi Kenta! And then the entire thing floods with streamers. He is covered with it. And it's like, yes! This is awesome.
Yeah. And I love that, like, there are so many streamers that you cannot see Kobashi.
You can't.
He is no longer there.
Yeah, it's...
Also, don't remember the ref's name, but shout out to him. He got booed like a motherfucker whenever they announced his name.
Yeah, I don't know
Those
what his
fans
issue
did not
was.
like him.
I don't know what his issue was, but hey, man, you've got two fans right here. Unless you did some sketchy stuff, in which case, go to hell. But
yeah,
so
or France.
Yeah, or France, same difference. But no, so it's like it's like. It's not a match that has, like, a super complex story to it. Like, it's not something like, this has years of build, and it's a dream. It's, like, literally, it's Kobashi coming in, and Samoa Joe's like, yo, I'm better than you. And then Kobashi's like, no, you aren't. I'm going to slap your titties around for 20 minutes and call it a day. Oh. And then he did. And it was awesome.
There's one part in the match where Kobashi has Joe in the corner and he's doing like those machine gun chops,
and he just does it for like 3 straight minutes.
Yeah, well, like at one point he slows down and you're like, oh, he's about to stop, and then he just with fighting spirit just goes right back into it, and it's like every chop you just see like sweat flying off of Joe.
Yeah,
that's another thing.
That as well, like
the video quality's not good. Every chop, there's just miss.
I think the video on the video we found, and I'll link it in the description if I remember to. I probably won't. It's literally like the first thing that comes up when you look Kenta Kobashi vs. Mojo. But like the highest quality is like 480p, but
yeah,
like when they chop each other, I swear it's 1080. It's crazy.
Also, shout out to Joe. So there was a thing that Toshiaki Kawada used to do but the Kawada kicks.
Yeah.
Joe does those pretty early in the match. But the thing about the Kawada kicks is that Kawada would almost always try to hit a power bomb, couldn't pick a guy up, and then he would go fuck it and just kick the dude in the head a bunch, and then he would do the power bomb. And Joe does that, and it's so cool.
Yeah, I will say, like early in the match when he does the little kicks to the face, it kind of looked, compared to how Kobashi is beating this man from pillar to post, the little kicks kind of look kind of dinky and weak. But then later on in the match, he hits them, and you can see the close up, and it's like, oh Jesus Christ, Joe, calm down, Joe.
Well, and then there's that point. There's a point in the match where Kobashi, I think, hits Joe like 3 times. He does like a key lock type like spinning back fist, but it's a chop.
Yeah, he does.
And it's like every time he
chops.
hits him,
Dude.
It's like every time he hits him, I'm like, how is your eardrum not busted? Because he's just taking a fist to the ear every time.
Yeah, and that's like a big thing. Is that like everyone in like when you look at like, and you could attest this more than I can. I'm just sort of pulling stuff out of thin air. But like if you look at like the sort of like all Japan greats, like the Misawa, Kobashi, Kawada, like they all had their thing. Misawa had the elbows, Kawada had the kicks, and then for Kobashi, he would just chop people really hard, and like he would do backhanded chops. He would grab someone by the wrist, like Rainmaker style, and just chop their neck a bunch. And we saw that in the match where he just grabbed Joe and kept chopping this dude's neck, and he would not let him go.
I love that there are multiple times in the match where Kawada has chopped, not Kawada, Kobashi has chopped Joe so much that Joe just falls down, and Kobashi just hits the ropes and runs back and does like what normally people would do, like a little elbow drop, but no, he's doing like falling chops, just back to back on dude.
He puts both his hands together and does like a double hand chop. Like I've never seen that in rules. And two spots I did want to mention in particular. There's one point where Samoa Joe is trying to hit this powerbomb on Kobashi, and he just can't hit it until eventually he's just like, you know what, you're going up. He lifts him for a powerbomb, and you think, oh, he's going to do like his sit-up, he's going to do his powerbomb into the Boston Crab. No, he then turns around and throws him into the turnbuckle, and Kobashi at that point just sort of looks at him just like, oh, he's actually very good.
Well, my favorite thing about that is Kobashi is hanging. He hits the turnbuckle, and then he's just hanging from the top rope. And it's like, there was so much intention in that powerbomb.
Yeah. Like, it's almost like when Shawn Michaels would, like, lie down at the top rope, like, Kobashi is just lying there, like, oh, no. But it very much so felt like a match where both men went in overestimating the other, and then by the end they gained, like, a mutual respect. Because there's multiple times where... there's multiple times where it's like Samoa Joe was just getting chopped and he was like, what did I get myself into? Like you could just read on his face. But then it's like there's other times where he was on the other foot and it's like Kobashi was getting beat up by Joe and he was like, okay, this kid can like go. And this is back before Samoa Joe messed up his spine. So like he was like, okay, I am he's definitely getting the full force of the Samoan submission machine.
There's also something else I wanted to talk about, because it's something that I noticed, especially early on in the match. It's almost like, so Kobashi was coming off of a 2-year title reign. He was the GHC champion, the GHC World Heavyweight Champion in Noah for like 2 years. Loses the belt, and then that's when he's like, well, fuck it, I'm just going to go to America and fight people. So, during that title reign, and during a lot of his time in Noah, he's kind of like an insurmountable guy. It's like he might lose, but he still comes out looking pretty strong. But if you go back and watch late 80s, early 90s All Japan, especially his matches with guys like Stan Hansen or like Dr. Death, he looks like he's in trouble. Yeah. He very much looks like he's in over his head. And it's when Joe first starts striking him early on in this match, he gets that look. Like it's a look that I hadn't seen on him for like a decade of his career. And then Joe Joe is hitting him so hard. He's like, oh shit. He's like, this reminds me of Hanson beating my ass.
Yeah. And speaking of Hanson, I think I'll touch on the finish here where
Oh,
Kobashi
so good.
is hitting these, like I said, grabbing the wrist and just chopping the neck, and then Joe's like, "I'm sick of this," breaks the hold, starts laying in the strikes on him, just going everywhere. Kobashi discus chops him like 3 straight times, shouts out to Eddie Kingston, and then picks him up, runs off the ropes, burning lariat, and that's over. And it's just like, what a match. And it's like, also, it wasn't terribly long either. It wasn't like
Yeah, it's like
a.
23 minutes, I think.
Yeah, it was like 23
Like
minutes, which is
entrances
perfectly
included.
fine. Which is perfectly fine for a main event match. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
we were having a discussion before the podcast today, but I will take, like, 40-minute matches can be cool and all, and going 60 minutes in the Budokan. But you could keep all that. Just give me like 10 minutes of Masato Tanaka and Mike Awesome hitting each other with chairs. Because I think there's a big, especially nowadays after the Omega Okada matches, which, to their credit, fantastic matches, but I think there's this idea that every match that's fantastic has to go like 20, 30 minutes. And it's like, nah, sometimes it's cool just see people beat the brakes off each other until one of them can't stand anymore. And sometimes that takes quicker than normal.
Well, it's like something else we were talking about. Talking about talking about Tanaka, Mike Awesome. It's like the match is under 10 minutes, and they just get their shit in and they're done. I feel like this 23-minute Joe Kobashi match was so well paced, and it was like they kind of hit all of the high notes, like that half and half
Yeah, the
suplex
half and half.
that
Dude, those are
Kobashi hit.
brutal.
Dude,
Those.
like the first one, you can tell that he just doesn't get enough height on it because Joe kind of like lands on top of him. But that second one, he like throws Joe on his head.
Yeah, it's awesome. Like I said, first of all, you should have paused and gone and watch it. If you haven't paused and gone and watched it, first of all, how dare you? Second of all, go do that now because legit, it is one of the best matches I've ever seen. But
It's so good.
I bring up the thing because like we've talked a lot on the podcast about how like uh, like these matches will happen, especially the FMC Cup, and I didn't really bring it up because I wanted to bring it up now. But it's like these matches will happen in the FMC Cup, and it's like, oh, Daniel Wright lost in like 3 minutes. She's not going to amount to anything in this business. But it's like in a Supremacy Cup, matches are supposed to be quick because people are like trying to win as quickly as possible. Uh, so I don't get what the big holdup is that someone lost as quick as possible. It's like, yeah, they lost, but they lost because uh, the other person just was able to do their job better.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where, you're going into a match that has a time limit, and you want to make a good showing. So you're going to go in, guns blazing. You're going to throw everything at the wall and see what sticks, and hope that you can get it done quicker and more decisively than your opponent does.
Yeah,
So if it is a short match, that just gives credence to, the fact that both competitors are going a mile a minute, hoping to finish the match as soon as possible.
absolutely.
Especially because you're in a tournament. You don't want to hurt yourself in an early match and potentially throw off your chances to win.
Well, and also like if you're just looking at next week, like Valencia and Kalen, it's like, okay, you just had if they had gone the full distance this week, uh, they would be at a even if win or lose, they'd be at a massive disadvantage coming up because they've now got to face someone who had a fresh match. So I think people are expending more gas quicker, but people are just like, oh, this person is like dead. It's like no, like we're gonna see, Danielle Wright do well in this tournament. I do not think Danielle Wright is gonna get steamrolled in this tournament. Same
Oh,
for
I
other
don't even.
people. It's just on this specific night that happened to happen, um, and I think there's also like again as well like we talked about like every match needs to be like a 40 to 50-minute match where it's like, oh, you need to have this many suicide dives or this many. It's like one of my favorite matches is in CWL, like, period, is some of the matches that are like on the shorter side. Like, one of my favorite matches is Colin Piper versus Ace Anderson. Just because, like, it's not one of those matches that's 2 or 3 falls or Iron Man where it's like it's gonna go super long and like there's this much history, but it's like they went in there and beat the crap out of each other for about like 6 minutes, and it was awesome.
Oh yeah. No, I'm all for short matches if those matches are bangers,
And they
and
are
that
most
match
of the
was.
time.
I
Yeah.
mean, yeah.
But yeah, I think.
Also, you mentioned suicide dives. I just want to talk about Joe Kobashi real quick because it's a real good match.
Oh yeah, Joe hit a
That
really good one on Kobashi.
oh man, that tope suicida that he hits is so good, and I love that he hits it after a baseball slide.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's good. It's good. Uh, I like I said, seriously, if you've not watched it, like, I get that we might maybe sometimes watch wrestling that is for everyone. Watch this match. Uh, I will say, if you haven't watched it, or you chose not to watch it, there are like 2 versions of it. One has Japanese commentary, one has no commentary, but it's like you don't need the commentary. Make your own commentary. Have us do commentary. Just put this podcast on in the background. By now, by the time we started the segment, if you pressed play like you should have, and you played both at the same time, the match is probably wrapping up at this point. You're probably either
Yeah,
getting to the final stretch, or it's already over. But yeah, we
yeah.
just wanted to take. Oh, continue.
I was gonna say at this point, like, it's over. Kabashi's like holding Joe's hand up, showing the sign of respect. Like you guys have made it through the match. If you just watch it while we're talking.
Yeah. But we just want to take this chance to educate the masses about what we love about wrestling, since we now have this extra platform where we can do what we want. You know, the bad kids are now running the playground. And hopefully we will have the person that holds the reins next week come back, and you guys can have a more filtered discussion. But if not, hey, give us a if we find out that our third co-host can't show up, give us some things to talk about. In terms of, like, if there's a certain match you guys want us to talk about, whether it be like an All Japan match, a old CWL match, Invisible Man versus Invisible Stan, anything like that, let us know, and we'll see if we have time to
Yeah,
talk about it.
yeah.
Um,
Give us matches to talk about, and then we'll talk about Onita versus Hayabusa instead.
yeah, and we'll say go to hell, or France.
Yeah, or France. Same
Yeah.
difference.
Uh, but yeah, that's gonna be all for the fan cast this week. Um, Please send your best get well soon wishes to Jacob. We miss you, buddy. And the show is quite literally not the same without you.
No,
Uh,
it is certainly not. It is. It is a wild ride when you're not here, and we need you to have those reins.
yes, because I mean, I'm cutting us off just because I have things I need to go do soon. But
That's
quite
fair.
literally, if I wasn't about to go and do that, we probably would sit here for another hour talking about random wrestling bullshit. So anyway, that's gonna be all for the fan cast, and we will see you all next week. Until then,
Adios.
we'll see you later.